So, sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy the next however minutes. No. Now, Ron Grainer, he wrote the score. A person called Delia Derbyshire electronically realized it. Grainer was so impressed with it that he graciously offered to split his royalty with her. Oh, what a decent man. Unfortunately, the BBC bureaucracy didn't allow him to. Of our pilot episode of this strange new show for the BBC. Well, there's William Hartnell as the first Doctor, and when we first see him, he comes out of his ship smoking a cigarette. Then we have Carol Ann Ford as Susie Foreman and William Russell as Ian Chesterton. And those two legends of the small silver screen still do stuff for Big Finish's Doctor Who audios. My thanks to you two guys for keeping the old show alive. And then we have Jacqueline Hill, who played Barbara Wright. Anthony Coburn, he wrote the episode along with an uncredited writer, C.E. Weber, who wrote the first draft of An Unearthly Child. But he never got any of his other Doctor Who stories filmed because apparently he couldn't dumb them down enough for the audience. I liked Barbara and Ian's first dialogue together. The mystery is great. This mysterious girl Susan Foreman is problematic. She doesn't want Barbara to meet her grandfather. He doesn't like strangers. Why does Susan live with her grandfather? Where are her parents? Why did she give the address of a junkyard and not a home? This is great storytelling, and it does grab one's attention. And we can't help but go along with the ride, and we do wonder what's going to happen to Ian and Barbara. Ian's description of Susan, I thought it was very apt. Stupid or just doesn't know. Absolutely brilliant at some things and excruciatingly bad at others. The Doctor pointing out that Ian doesn't believe that you can fit a bigger room into a smaller room. However, this is the case with a television, which is an interesting observation. With a television, you can fit a castle inside a house. You know, that's probably a bit too strong, but I did feel that the flashback scene felt a bit too long. In modern television, I would suggest that perhaps all of the things that happened in the flashback would have probably been played out probably at the start of the show. I do have to remember that this isn't Modern Who, and I will try to remember that as I go through the classic series. I like the fog and the distant tolling of the bell. I'm not really sure what the policeman's presence is supposed to accomplish, other than maybe we're supposed to get the feeling that something criminal's going on. Is this I.M. Foreman, the head of a criminal underworld in London? What's the deal? The Doctor Who theme. It cuts just for the first time we see a very familiar Doctor Who icon. A police box. A dark grey police box. Oh, no, that's right. This is black and white television. Over which the title of the episode appears. No. The box has always been blue. However, if Unearthly Child was set in Edinburgh, for instance, pre-1960, we would have had a red police box. The dust cover on the book looks like a piece of paper with the French Revolution typed onto it, and placed over some other book. A really short book. Of the Classic Who Doctor I'm familiar with most is Tom Baker. And as I listened to Hartnell, lo and behold, I heard some of Tom's voice in there. We are told that Susan is 15. She is not 15. In fact, the actress at the time was 23. The music is interesting in the flashback scenes that I spoke of before. It sounds strange, chaotic, out of place. A very good description of Susan herself. Barbara. I'm going to lend her a book on the French Revolution. Ian. What's she going to do? Rewrite it? I loved Ian's "I have an inquiring mind and a sensitive ear," and Susan very quickly turns off her music. Loved Barbara's intuition and foreboding line. Silly, isn't it? I feel frightened, as if we're about to interfere in something that is best left alone. Beautiful. I did love Ian's comment on the TARDIS. It's alive, and we just have to watch The Doctor's Wife to know that yes, the TARDIS is very much alive. Oh, and one thing that the Doctor says, which I kind of liked. Your ignorance is about as great as your arrogance. Susan comes across very grown up, blunt, and quite sure of herself. The Doctor, Dr. Foreman, Ian calls him in the next episode, is even more blunt, but he is a more grumpy blunt. Doctor says, I tolerate this century, but I don't enjoy it. Nice person. Not. His first line is, in fact, what are you doing here? Followed fairly shortly by, what do you want? He's rude, curt, abrupt, abrasive, and not at all interested in what Barbara has to say either. In fact, after Barbara says of hearing Susan's voice, it came from in there. You imagined it. I most certainly did not, says Barbara. And then the Doctor quite refuses to answer her and gently pulls Ian aside, only wanting to address a male. Young man, is it normal to suppose that anyone would be inside a cupboard like that? Also, onto the end of this line is the first time we hear Hartnell's iconic I'm only guessing that it's iconic. I've only seen the first 3 stories of this Doctor, but I suspect that it is something that happens a lot because both Ford and Russell make an effort to include in their Hartnell voice acting for the Big Finish audios. I can understand the Doctor's annoyance. But we soon discover that he is deceptive and he is a kidnapper. Interestingly, well, maybe not to you, but to me, Hartnell gives us 3 and he gives us 2 young man, and laughs smugly 4 times. At Coal Hill School, enter our first ever companions in televised Who, Ian Chesterton and Barbara Wright. He's a doctor, isn't he? Says Ian, which is our televised indirect first mention of our traveller's username. And oh my, what a surprise Ian and Barbara and the audience get when they step inside the police box to find a large room. One mystery solved, only to present to the audience an even bigger on the inside mystery. The police box is referred to as a ship. The word TARDIS is first spoken, the acrostic of which is provided for us by Susan. Time and relative dimension probably should be dimensions in space. The Doctor talks of his civilization, but doesn't elaborate. Cut off from their civilization, with no friends and no protection, Audience has got to be left wondering why. What is this alien? With hope, he says, "One day we shall go back." Yes, one day. At about the 21-minute mark, we hear the iconic elephantine sound of a dematerializing TARDIS. Though we don't see it vanish, but we do see Earth shrinking away. And then the cheap 1963 time vortex effect. Shifting shadows. And now we get a whirlpool effect. Now, I didn't pick the elephant sound until a behind-the-scenes special. Now I hear it every time when the TARDIS dematerializes, and I have to admit it has spoiled it for me a little. I wish I didn't know, and I think it's probably because an elephant is an earth animal, and so the sound is no longer alien to me. And then we see the TARDIS in a completely different place. No junkyard and no buildings, just sand and starkness. In the junkyard, William Russell's trip acting is, well, left to be desired. Decimalization of the pound was announced 28 months after the, I suppose it's the third pilot by then, of An Unearthly Child. Did Webber and Coburn just guess? Or did they have inside information? Starts off well enough. But once the companions get into the TARDIS, there's quite a lot of talk. My interest, however, is still there, as we learn a little more about this mysterious doctor and his mysterious ship. Out of 11, and I'll take into account when this was made, An Unearthly Child gets a Paul McGann. Hardcore fans may be outraged that I am calling An Unearthly Child Story 1, and the next 3 episodes, 100,000 BC Story 2. But hey, if I include the next 3 episodes parts of the pilot, then the mark would sink below a Tom Baker, quite frankly. With Unearthly Child, there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's why I've decided that it can stand as an alone story. This, well, it's just a bit like a trailer. Well, I do hope that I can continue doing the classic Who reviews. I know a lot of people have tried and they haven't got very far. Tachyon TV, they're doing quite well. They're trying to go through the series too, and I do believe that they've got through the first 2 Doctors so far, so they're making progress. May I be able to do the same, and be interesting at the same time.